Half a day. Thank you all for being here. I'm recording this section, this introduction, and this presentation on the models of learning, so that it can actually be repeated during all of the sessions throughout the week. We know that there's going to be different teachers and probably different administrators or staff members who will be participating during the training this week. So we want to make sure that we had a common set of points that will go across kind of all of the different modules. But before I begin, I really want to thank all of you for participating, especially those of you who are on teacher status, whether you be a classroom teacher, instructional coach who's helping us put the training together, librarians, counselors, really anybody who's on 12-month status. 9-month status. We are aware that this really is supposed to be your vacation, but unfortunately, you're cutting it somewhat short so that you can be with us, and we want you to know we appreciate that very much. If we were going to have all of these trainings during the school year, we know that would severely eat into an already limited set of instructional time with our students, instructional times with our students. So it's going to be very challenging if we did not have any of these training sessions over the summer. So really, by you attending the training that we have this week and subsequent weeks for other teachers, it's really going to help us ensure that we maximize contact time, or at least instructional time, with our students throughout the school year. We know that there's a lot of stress that's out there, dealing with the uncertainty that we're going to be experiencing with this coming school year. But I just want to kind of share with you 3 points that hopefully we can find comfort in as we address these challenges together. The first one is we need to recognize that this is something that's being addressed throughout the country. It's throughout the world, basically. It's not something that we're dealing with just on Guam. And because it's something that the whole world is dealing with, there really is no expert. There really is no one right way to do it. In fact, even when we have our meetings and collaborative sessions with other districts and other states, it becomes very clear that people are really just feeding off of each other's ideas. If you look at the plan that we've put together, and then you look at the stories and articles of what other districts and states are putting together in their neck of the woods, you see that our plans are very similar about different models and different ways to approach distance learning, and different ways to approach safety at their schools or districts. So that's really the first thing, is understand that this is really a worldwide pandemic and a worldwide challenge that everyone is trying to address. The second one is, please understand that we don't expect you to do this alone. I think over the last several years, we have really grown our capacity to not just collaborate, but to communicate across all content areas, across all schools, and across grade levels. I mean, I remember when I first started teaching in the 90s, and later on in the 2000s, and we didn't have a structure that allowed us to share across the district. We didn't necessarily know other teachers in other schools, and we didn't know other teachers in our content area. But now, you guys all know each other. I mean, kindergarten teachers know each other from all across the district. Reading teachers in 8th grade know each other across the district. Biology teachers in high school know each other across the district. And with that, with that communication mechanism and our ability to collaborate, we really shouldn't feel as though we need to figure out all of this stuff on our own. We're going to continue promoting that collaboration, and we're going to continue promoting that cooperation, as we address the challenges for next school year. And lastly, please understand that nobody expects us, or nobody expects you in particular, as the classroom teachers, to get this perfect the first time around. In fact, I don't think there's this island-wide pressure for us to open. No one's saying, "Hey, you better hurry up and get this right and get schools open." In fact, there is some criticism and concern out there that we might be moving too fast. So if you feel as teachers that there's this pressure that you have to be perfect the first time around, please don't do that. Don't do that to yourself or to each other. This is really a learning experience for all of us. It's a huge learning curve for not just the families and students, but even for the school system and in particular teachers. So, don't put that kind of pressure on yourself, thinking that you have to get everything right the first time. This is a learning experience, and of course, as you always do, we know that you're going to do your best to do the best job that you can. But understand that people will understand that you are improving. You're going to improve over time, and we are all going to improve over time. So I'm just going to go through some information that most of you should already know, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear, so that way you yourself may be able to respond to families or other students, or to students, or to community members at any time, if you're wondering what our overall strategy looks like. So I'm going to go over the models of learning. Please understand also that these models of learning came as a result of addressing parental concerns about physically coming back to school. Under normal circumstances, under ideal circumstances, these models of learning should not necessarily be separate from each other. In fact, online instruction should be really complementary to face to face instruction. It should be a normal part of face to face instruction during the day, as well as an extension to work done after school. And then the home learning hard copy piece is basically homework. I mean, that's kind of what we normally do. The biggest difference between homework and the hard copy piece is the fact that you don't really have the instructional component for the day. That's usually done during the day. So the idea is that it is something that's brought home. It is something that's handled, almost independently now with the families. But under normal circumstances, our traditional face-to-face models would be complemented by a robust online approach, as well as a hard copy approach for students who may have challenges, doing all of the work online, either through a lack of internet connectivity or through equipment. I just want to go through this, for the benefit of teachers, teacher leaders, as well as administrators, because this is kind of what's being discussed right now in every school. But it doesn't mean that this will change. This won't change throughout the year. So there's different ways that you can approach it. Uh, I've given three broad examples of how a school can approach their master schedule with their principals as well as their teachers. School administrators who I know are on this training as well also know that it's an important part of this is getting their teachers involved, so they have to collaborate and discuss with their teachers what some of the options are regarding how to approach student and teacher scheduling. Obviously, um, student data is going to be a key factor. We want to make sure that we know what percentage of students are choosing online, what percentage are choosing hard copy, and what percentage are choosing face to face, because based on that information, that's how they would eventually develop their master schedule. So here's the first kind of example, and this is kind of on the end where you have somewhat of a large distribution of online or traditional or even hard copy, but that would be assigning specific teachers to teach each group. So you allocate a certain number of teachers to teach online, a certain number of teachers to teach home learning, and a certain number of teachers to teach traditional. Again, this would be based on your data. Does your data support it? One of the strengths here is that the teachers get to focus on one model. So they're online instructors. They can focus on improving that platform. Same as hard copy folks, that they can improve that particular model, as well as traditional face to face. They can focus on supports for the days that the students are in school, as well as the days that they're not in school. So there would be a mixture of trainings that would be provided, as well as making sure that teachers within each of those models are able to collaborate with each other, kind of, and build off of each other's experiences. The cons to that, the challenges would be the data may not support allocating full-time teachers. So that would be one of those challenges. This example would be kind of in between the two extremes. Teachers teaching a combination of two or 3 groups and separated by periods or models. In elementary school, this doesn't necessarily work in terms of periods, but it may work in terms of uh, separating grade levels. So if you're looking at kinder first, second and third, fourth and fifth, might help. Um, Secondary teacher may do it by periods. So if you have 3 periods of traditional and then 2 periods of online, or 2 periods of hard copy students, and so on, but you can break it up by periods. Um, some of the strengths include this shows a combination of both extreme options, and I'll go to the next extreme option. But the challenges are also the same. So it depends on the student data. You have to make sure that it justifies the teacher assignment. Also, it may be difficult to teach 2 models, at the same time. Again, that would depend on teacher skill and how comfortable they are with different platforms. And also, one of the things that we discussed with the GFT, which is why we had their support, is approaching this with the understanding that we're not looking at increasing class size. So we're not looking at increasing class size. I mean, there may be some situations where your class size is increased by 1 or 2, but we're not looking at large class size increases. That would just be somewhat unreasonable, especially if a teacher is teaching a particular platform for the first time. The third example is really, to me, the hardest example, and I would really caution schools, and if any school is really considering this, to please work with your teachers and discuss this thoroughly, because this does seem to be the harder of the 3, and that would having all teachers teach all 3 groups in their classes and provide specific supports to each group. Now, there are some advantages to this. If you wanted to look at that, for example, there's a strong assurance of content alignment across all 3 models, obviously, because if they teach all 3, then they're aligning it with themselves. So there's no difference between the different models. It will be very easy for the students to transition within the 3 models, so your master schedule doesn't get messed up. If a student or family would like to switch over to a different model, you basically have the same teachers and they basically have the same schedule. Also, the distribution of and assignments of students across all grade levels and content areas. So yeah, that goes back to schedules. You don't have to um, mess the master schedule up if your distribution of students between each of the different models were to change throughout the course of the year. The challenges, however, in many cases may outweigh the advantages. And again, I really caution you to consider this. One is it requires the teachers to cover all 3 models of learning, which requires training in all 3, which may be very difficult for a lot. I mean, to master all 3 and to provide materials for all 3 and to provide interventions for all 3 could be quite daunting. Um, and depending on the number of students in each model, the time to address all groups will vary. My concern is that if a teacher is teaching all 3 models, who do we tend to pay the most attention to? We tend to pay the most attention to the face-to-face students because they're physically there. So, and of course, the Friday interventions was just meant to be a common day for all teachers to be available for interventions. That doesn't mean that interventions were only supposed to take place on Friday. So, having teachers teach all 3 would make it very difficult for interventions or some type of communication to take place during the week. So again, I just want to caution any school that plans to use this last model or last approach. Across all 3 models, there should be 3 kind of main components that should be similar for online, similar for the hard copies, and similar for the face-to-face. One is a student personal academic plan. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. Progressive implementation of the models of learning, where there should be some type of pacing and of the implementation. The common lesson design parts and guidance. For the student academic plan, and this could be digital. So I encourage, even for the online students, this could be kind of like a digital file that gets sent to every student, and there's some record of it that you can refer to. But basically, the student's schedule, a description of the model that they're using, a description of the expectations for each of the models that they're using, a syllabus for the class or classes, secondary, all the classes that the students are taking, They should have that grading policies, of course, by the teacher, and a list of course content. This is really important because one of the things that we know is with both home learning models, it's going to require a lot of engagement with the parents and the students as well. So they need to be clear on what they're supposed to be learning, and with the priority standard skills and topics, the PSSTs, and the skills description, it really makes it clear about what the expectations are for that class. Basically, what are students supposed to be learning for each of the courses that they are taking. Of course, all students will need a GDOE email account. Even if they're on the home learning model and even if they're on the traditional model, we want to try to promote digital learning as much as we can, because we do know that some parents who chose the home learning hard copy model do have some internet uh, capability and do have some digital access, but the challenge is that they don't have it consistently. So even if they don't have it consistently, we do want them to be able to access it whenever they can, and as much as possible they can email, or as much as possible they can do some of the work online. That would really help. And then, every school has some set of office hours or support schedule for Fridays. So how can the students access the interventions? How can they have access to their teachers? And this is either um, through internet, through email, or through phone calls, or calling the school and whatnot, and having some kind of schedule set up for them. Progressive implementation of the models, and this is really where I think intuitively we know that this is necessary, but teachers and schools, you need to know that you have our permission to take your time with this. We've been out of school for so long, and these students, and of course their families, just like we all have been through a very traumatic experience, and may even continue to be going through that experience. So the last thing we want to do is jump into the academics while totally ignoring kind of the social and emotional component of our relationships. So phase one is making the connection and building relationships. Spend time getting to know your students and their families. Introduction of teachers to parents and students, a description of the model that they're using, a distribution of the syllabus so that they're familiar with the syllabus of the classes that their children are taking, the student is taking, protocols, expectations, questions from parents and students, safety expectations, and of course, any social and emotional supports that we could provide. Spend time on this. Don't feel like you need to rush this so you can immediately get into your content. It will definitely pay off in the long run. The second phase, and I want everyone to understand that these phases aren't necessarily, oh, you have to finish phase one and then you get to phase two. Phase two is kind of like a second part to what you're attempting, and this may even be while phase one is still kind of going on. So you're still doing a lot of phase one activities, but slowly kind of moving into phase two. But that's moving into the curriculum and instruction, introduction of content and material, and reviewing of protocols and expectations for the class, where you're now in implementing the material, introducing the material to students, giving them a chance to interact with the material, as well as the parents, and making sure that they're provided with a variety of opportunities to demonstrate student learning. And part of the relationship in the beginning is reminding parents that the point of it all is student learning. And part of why that's important is because we don't want families and parents to simply think that the grade is the motivation. Uh, and I know that there's some concern that have been brought up. Well, how do we know the student or the child is the one doing the work, and it's not the parent or older brother or sister doing the assignment? Well, part of that is making it clear to parents and families that the work is not necessarily the most important part. If we view the work or the assignments as the most important part, then they're just going to focus on doing the assignments. They're just going to focus on doing the work. And once the work is done here, turn it in. So some people will have no problem with, okay, yeah, just finish this here and then turn it in. That cannot be the motivation. Simply getting the work done and getting the grade cannot be the motivation. As a parent, especially in the earlier grades, an example could be, my motivation is really making sure that my child can learn how to read. If I want my child to learn how to read, then it's very important that my child is the one who does the activities. It's very important that my child is the one that finishes the assignment. If I, as a parent, do the assignment for them simply so they can turn the work in and they can get a grade, I'm not helping them. It's actually making it worse, because their child, number one, is not learning how to read, not learning the material, and two, you're actually teaching them that it's okay to cheat. Now, both of those two are obviously very, very bad. So impressing upon parents that is kind of key. Um, and of course, I would ask that you do so in a way that doesn't insult them. Like, for some parents, the thought of doing that would never come to mind. But I think the reality is that in some cases there may be that desire, or at least that temptation, especially if their children are struggling. Sometimes they just want to help and say, here's the answer. But in fact, no, if they're struggling, then they need help to struggle through the material, not someone to tell them what the answer is. And the third phase, of course, is just constant continuous improvement. As you go through the model, as you get to know the families, you kind of know what works, what doesn't work. You kind of know what the interventions and supports look like that are successful with certain families. So that the third phase is really just ongoing and improved implementation. I put a note down here that these phases will definitely overlap and at times be fluid, as we may need to return to making connections and building relationships depending on class and individual student progress. And this may not be the same for every student. There may be some that might need some more relationship building. There may be some parents that need more support in how to structure a day with their children when they're at home, because like we said, we all agree that both home learning models, the online model as well as the hard copy model, are going to really require a lot of student and a lot of parent engagement. We know that we've said that before, that it's important, but this coming year it's going to be so much more important than we could ever describe. Now, the lesson design piece is going to come a little bit later. Each of the modules has kind of a real simple, straightforward lesson plan design that we're going to ask teachers to look at. But that would be, again, common across the board: the online piece, the the hard copy piece, and the face-to-face model. Now, there's actually a little error on this slide, so we're gonna make sure that we correct this slide. But the middle one is the home learning hard copy piece in the middle. But each one of these models has specific uh, components to them as well. So some of the specific components will include, for the home learning online, obviously the parents and families need the equipment and internet access. They would probably need also technology support. And I know that there was a question about video conferencing, and because some people kind of have the view of like continuous synchronous classes, and that's not what we're doing. In fact, I think that would be way too much if we had all synchronous classes where everybody was online at the same time and trying to take a class like you would. It would just be really too difficult to manage. So with that video conferencing, we're looking at least one per class per week. So to clarify, that's one per class per week with a maximum of three per class per week. So, I think beyond three, I think would be quite a bit. In elementary school, we might be able to handle a little bit more if we're looking at a whole class, but maybe you're looking at some small group instruction as well. So understand that we're talking about the large group instruction. Uh, but in terms of the small groups, you can have a number of small groups throughout the week. For secondary schools, we have to be mindful that in middle school, students are taking 7 classes. So when you have 7 classes, one video conference per class is already 7 video conferences for the entire week. When you do 2, that's obviously 14. And if you go all the way up to the max, which is 3, that's already 21 video conferences throughout the week, which could be somewhat daunting. And also looking at a balance between synchronous and asynchronous interaction. Is all of the interactions, some of the interaction could be synchronous where all students are logging on at the same time, or even some smaller group sessions that are done at the same time, versus asynchronous where some of the material is introduced at different times Some of it through videos, like what we're doing right now. Zoom videos or screencasts are very simple to do, where you can video yourself and do your PowerPoint presentation, so students can actually watch it later. At their own time, uh, and that could be kind of scheduled throughout the week. The home learning hard copy piece in the center is there is could be a combination of some parents using online resources where they may be able to email the material or ask for copies of the material to be emailed to them, but there would need to be a routine for pickup. This has to be kind of scheduled at the school level. We strongly recommend that you figure out some way with your colleagues and your administration about a pickup cycle, a pickup and drop off cycle for parents. Avoid having them come to the campus 3, 4, 5, 6 times because they're picking things up from different teachers. If there's a way where they can come to campus and pick everything up at the same time and then go back to the campus and drop everything off at the same time, it will really help, with families who have trouble with transportation, as well as it would be helpful for the school to have some type of organized way for the material to be dropped off and picked up, systematically throughout the week, as opposed to it being random, right? I did speak to one administrator who said, "Well, Joe, we do have a schedule and we did give instructions about it, and parents still come in at random times." I said, "Well, yeah, but imagine if you didn't have a schedule. If you didn't have a schedule, you're almost guaranteed that everybody would come almost at random times, and that's absolutely what you don't want to have." And then lastly, for the traditional face-to-face, an example of a best practice would be having some type of system or having some type of routine set up with the families. Where I'm just giving you an example here. If you have day one, which is an A day, let's pretend that that's Monday. Day one is you're introducing the content and material to the students. You're introducing it, to them either for the first time or you're reviewing something from the last time that you were meeting, but you're kind of going through the basics with them. You're showing them the resources, you're giving them some examples, and then you're going over with them what they're going to do on the second day and what they're going to do on the third day. Where you maybe on the second day, it's like a review from what the teacher said the day before, and maybe begin practice or the assignment itself. So when they go home the next day, they need to understand that it's not a break, it's not a 4-day weekend, but the second day is they have to review the material from the previous day, start practicing on the material, and if they have an assignment, to start doing the assignment. And then on day 3, you can complete the assignment or continue practice, with the work, and when I was presenting this to the instructional coaches, we said, this kind of looks like the cycle for the weekend, where student attends school on Friday, and then what does the teacher sometimes do is they prepare them for homework that's supposed to take place on the weekend, and the recommendation is, okay, on Saturday at least go through the material, review it, and then maybe start on some of the assignments that you have on Saturday, and then on Sunday complete the assignment or continue on with the practice, so that Monday you can go ahead and turn the assignment in, and then your teacher can kind of catch up and do some type of review from the week before. So again, I know when we kind of lay it out this way, it sounds kind of neat. It sounds kind of easy to follow, but it doesn't necessarily mean that things are always going to be as smooth as we like. But if we try to at least look for best practices and share those best practices with each other, and look for kind of consistent implementation, over time, we're bound to see some improvements. And when those improvements do happen, we'd really like for you to share with your colleagues, so that we can continue to build each other's capacity. So that concludes my introduction and the models of learning. I really want to thank you again, for your participation. I know that there's going to be a lot of information shared with you throughout the week. We do have a follow-up schedule to these modules, and there are going to be 2 other series after this. So there's going to be 2 other groups that are going to be attending training after this. So we're doing this whole series kind of like 3 times before the school year starts. We're hoping to catch at least 60 to 70% of all teachers, and then maybe the 30% of the teachers are the ones who could not attend training over the summer. But Again, thank you again. Take comfort in knowing that we are all in this together. This is not something that every single teacher has to take the burden on themselves. There's going to be a number of collaborative sessions. We're going to pull teachers together to work on common lesson plans and common resources, just like what we did at the end of the school year over the summer, where we pulled teachers together and we kind of divided the work, on what needed to go onto the website. Technology allows us to collaborate across the island, so there's no reason why any one teacher has to feel the full burden of all of these lessons and all of these units. This is something that we can work together on. So again, I appreciate all your time and your attention, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to your presenters. Adios.